Greetings, friend. You have landed on Moonday Monday. This is Phase 6, and I, Spark Vizsla, shall be your guide into the stars. Now, as a spark, I hope to rekindle the embers within you, whichever embers those may be, but hopefully you can gain something from this. So let's get you resupplied and refueled with some knowledge. Tonight, in the east, you will see Lady Selene rise, as she is coming from a full moon. But even though she's going from a full moon to the new moon, she's actually going to be coming in to a perigee, which is when she is closest to us, and that will occur in just a few days. So she may be receding into the darkness to bathe her backside in the light of Helios, but she is coming closer. And that ends my poetic opening. Today we're going to be talking not about much. Ninkasi reached out to me earlier this week, so definitely looking forward to getting some more info and telling you some awesome stories from them. But I do want to hear it from them, like their journeys and what they're going to do next. So I don't want to just read off of their homepage, oh, they sent this to space and here's how it went. I really want to talk to them and get, an in-depth conversation on it and what their next steps are. So you can be aware as they move on into space. Well, hopefully they send up a third cargo to space for their bruise, and maybe even one for the moon. We'll see, though. From there, we're definitely, that is the Ninkasi update, pretty much. Also going to be talking about China, and they recently sent up a space station. I know not too many people heard about it, but they do have a space station up there again. From there, actually, even before I get to, after the Chinese thing, there's not much to talk about in terms of the SpaceX explosion itself, but there's a few interesting implications from that I've come to realize about the whole rocket industry in general. But before we even get on that, let's talk about something recent. And so, just to touch on the recent incidents, 3 attacks, or attempted attacks. One attempted to had some semblance of success, no deaths, thankfully. However, I'm not even going to start off with the bad news of what happened. I believe you already know what went down. First, I want to say thank you to the person at the MARSOC charity event for leaving their bag. You have changed the course of history, I believe. How things played out, thankfully, because of your small error, has definitely helped out a lot. So thank you, whoever you may be, even if you probably won't listen. Actually, if you happen to be that person that left the bag and listened to this podcast, I honestly don't see that happening. But at the same time, you probably thought, oh, I don't see my mistake ever actually, or me being late and leaving my bag, actually ever saving a life. But hey, it happened. So anything can happen. So that gives me a little bit of hope. And for the second one, I want to thank the gentleman in Minnesota, the off-duty police officer who actually stopped the threat. Now, this ended within about 5 minutes when he crossed paths with this off-duty officer. And the on-duty police were on their way and going to do their whole little SWAT tactical diffusion thing and whatnot. But at the same time, I really do want to thank this citizen, because at this point, he was not on duty. And even if you are a police officer, you are not military. You are still a civilian. So the fact that, one, he wasn't on duty, and as a civilian, he definitely rose to the challenge at that time. So thank you very much. Finally, in New York, which hurt 29 people, I want to thank not only NYPD, but also the NY Fire Department, ATF, and all of the Homeland Security agencies for coming out and actually doing their thing. I know, an American on the West Coast thanking law enforcement. I'm probably going to get chewed out by some folks, but, you actually stepped up and did the right thing, and not just because, oh, it's your job, but you actually did it. That's what counts. It doesn't matter how much you're getting paid or if it's your job or not, it's what you do. So thank you for what you did and for what you do, and keep on doing it. Okay, I'll be quite brief on this, but understanding the recent attacks on our soil can definitely be quite shaky, and for some people, I know there are those that simply don't care of anything that may be related to it, regardless of the facts. And that's just how people are going to be. With that being said, definitely keep striving and moving forward. Whether, regardless of like whatever political team you may be on, whether you're, like really upset about this or really happy and want more people to come over. Okay, that last one is somewhat odd, but still, definitely move forward. Like sitting around commenting on Facebook and social media and grr, I think this and I think that. That's okay, but at the end of the day, doing that doesn't really change much. It's more so of you being a sports fan to the media. And people often disassociate social media from mainstream media when really they're the same thing, when both are very curated and controlled. If you've used Facebook or Tumblr and YouTube, if you've gone around between those three and have tried posting the same opinion, like post two opposing opinions on all three of those platforms and look at how they're received, censored, and moderated. And you'll notice, okay, some things are okay to say here, some things aren't okay to say there. So again, just like CNN and Fox News, some things are okay to be said there, some things are not okay to be said elsewhere. So again, an extension of the media. Don't become a sports fan. Just keep moving forward, living your life. You've made it this far, and you can keep going too. I know you may have friends or family out there, or one of the hurt may be listening to this. First of all, if you're hurt and you're listening to Moonday Monday, oh my gosh, my thoughts go out to you, and thank you for even tuning in to a guy with a microphone talking about space. And so definitely keep moving forward. If you feel the need to, want better immigration reform, for refugees, all right, then actually focus on doing that. If you feel you need to prepare yourself for an incoming wave of invasions, okay, actually do that. It's sad to see that people are just talking, things and not actually doing it. Same thing with me. I'm like, oh, and this is actually where we start talking about space. Same thing with me. I've come to notice, like, oh, okay, I'll get up on this podcast, and I'm really hoping I'm encouraging at least one person through these 6 episodes. If I have encouraged one person to either go to a space event or to take up some goal of space knowledge, or even somehow an interest in space and somehow integrating it into their lifestyle, I feel like I've done my job. Even if it's just one person out of all of my listens, out of all of my downloads, out of all of my followers, if it's just one person, job well done. I could die tomorrow, job well done. But even now, I'm like, okay, I'm up here talking. Then I'm like, what am I doing? So I will be at the DENT Space Exploration Expo this Wednesday and Thursday on the 21st and the 22nd. If you want to meet up, if you want to hang out afterwards, I'm going to be hanging out at a local bar nearby. So definitely feel free to come down there. But either way, feel free to meet up and whatnot. But I'm also taking on my own pursuit in the space sector. And it sounds kind of odd, but definitely been plotting out implications of asteroid mining, and not just so much of like in my sci-fi writings, but actual like inclusive to my sci-fi writings, like, oh, okay, well, how would a policy around this go? How would a law around this go? How would a business model around this go? And like things in space, from like setting up a lunar establishment, not necessarily a colony, but more so like, okay, how would we set up a lunar mining site, as you've heard in my previous podcast that I really enjoy the idea of. And how can we work on, actually incorporating that into our society. So we transition from a terrestrial species to a cosmic species. And that right there is huge. And I don't mean huge like, that one guy always says. But anywho, I mean, if you're actually from New York and that's how you say it, that's how you say it. Just because he says it like that doesn't make it criminal. Either way, that transition is huge, and I think that really gets overlooked. So there's not too much going on this week in terms of like space, sadly, thanks SpaceX. But so China, starting with them, launched their core module to their space station, Tiangong 2. I believe I know I'm butchering that name. I'm not even gonna kid you. To my Chinese listeners out there, please give me a proper pronunciation. I know there's some on the internet, but it's always how I interpret it may be different from your native tongue, and I would love to know how it is pronounced in your native tongue, be that Mandarin or Cantonese. I'm not even sure which one this is in, but I believe it is Mandarin. I could be wrong. If I am incorrect, please definitely correct me. I do want to know how it is properly said. So they have their main module up there, and they are planning 2 modules in the works already. So 2 modules are being planned, and one will be a cargo module. The other will be a crew module. And so pretty much these will be the loading ports for the modules for crew and one for cargo. What is interesting is China is apparently developing a fully automated cargo system. Now, this is something even the ISS doesn't have. When the ISS gets a shipment, apparently astronauts got to go in and boom, do it all by hand and bring it on board. The Chinese space station is actually going to have an automated system for that. And so that's really interesting to see like how they will have their setup. Given it's China, there won't be too much info released after this podcast, I'm sure. But that still is pretty nice to know. Another really cool thing about it, and it's not like a world-breaking thing, but they are going to apparently have a telescope. They're going to have a telescope dock with the space station. So imagine the Hubble telescope, or after that pile of scrap finally gets taken out the sky, we have the James Webb telescope. Actually, you know what? Forget Hubble. Just ignore that thing as scrap for now. And let's say let's focus on James Webb. We have James Webb up there, and that telescope. Imagine if it was on the same layer as the ISS. So instead of sending up a shuttle, which we can't do because we don't have the shuttle anymore to fix it like we used to, we could just, as China's going to do, dock it with the actual space station, and then do repairs and upgrades and modifications from there. And I find that really interesting because it's like, where are they going to take this? What are they going to do with it? Given it's China, of course, the whole, I'm sure they're going to make a evil spy thing and spy on America, or some evil villain death laser thing. They have enough billionaires and millionaires to actually they do have enough millionaires and billionaires for somebody to pull a James Bond out there and have like some evil laser thingy point the sun down. Again, I know it's been done in one of the movies, but still. So China has that going for them, but they also have a lot of launches. There's been like a peak in their launches, I've noticed. Not saying that it's the highest. It's not like the highest in history or anything like that. But it is interesting to see they are launching quite a few interesting projects. The space station, they have the quantum satellite up there, which uses quantum encryption, which I believe is a first of its kind. So I know we often overlook the taikonauts and the Chinese space agency in general, but I kind of feel they're going to be a legit player in the future. Remember how nobody really noticed, or for that matter cared, when China went to the moon? Well, and even today, I'll talk to people like, oh, yeah, Qigong is on the moon. Chang'e, I'm sorry, 3 is on the moon, and here's what it did, and it recently broke down. And they're like, wait, China has a rover on the moon? I'm like, yeah. They're like, oh, wow, oh my God, they just landed. I'm like, no, 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 no. This has been since 2013. They're like, really? I never heard about it. I'm like, I want to put the blame on media and whatnot, focusing elsewhere on hysterical and enraging news, but at the same time, typically China isn't taken too seriously, similar to North Korea. Like when North Korea launched a satellite, which passed, I believe it was just due south, or pretty much over the Super Bowl after 5 hours after the Super Bowl ended, it passed overhead. But nobody really takes into account, like, oh, they had a really good plan all of a sudden, and oh, despite their really poor infrastructure, they have all this sudden technology. It's like, oh, okay, nobody really pays attention because, well, media and there's not a real perceived credibility from China and North Korea, more so China, because, oh, hey, they did X, Y, and Z, and people are like, all right, so they probably copied SpaceX. Yeah, they must wrote down all the schematics and somehow copied them. All right. And then it's like, oh, hey, they have a space station up there. Oh, we already have one. Oh, they have a quantum satellite. Oh, there's not really much quantum communication to be used for. All right, so we don't take China seriously, which I feel kind of could be bothersome. If let's say one day, like we woke up and it's like, oh, hey, China is sending an asteroid mining mission. Not even like, oh, like deep space industries or planetary resources. Like, oh, they're sending out a prospector, and one day in the far, far future in a faraway galaxy, we'll start mining one day. If China was like, yeah, we're going up to mine, we probably will fail, but we have a manned crew and one woman just to show diversity and a nice middle finger to the U.S., but we're sending them up right now, today, to go mine an asteroid that's coming near Earth. People probably wouldn't take that too well. I'm sure people would say, oh, that's great for China, and I'm happy to see somebody doing it. But for Americans, it would be, they're actually, and it's not even like, oh, the space race where, oh, they're sending something out. It's, hey, they're actually going to do something and bring back results. It's not like the moon landing where, oh, we're just running up there to stick a flag and, see whose rocket wank is bigger. It's, or even like the Sputnik thing, like, oh, they got something into space so they possibly could launch an ICBM. No, it's, hey, they went to an asteroid and actually mined it, so they actually have the capabilities to do so. That act, if China pulled something to that matter, that would, I don't want to say it would solidify them as one of the best superpowers in the world, but it definitely would advance them as one for sure. Because whoever controls space controls the world. Remember, and gamers are going to love this one, Scott Manley fans too, but in Civilization, remember how, oh, if you get to space and accomplish this one cultural goal, like you pretty much win the fucking game. That's kind of how life is as well. If China started doing asteroid missions and set up a moon base, not even like had it completed tomorrow, but if they just launched it tomorrow, they pretty much would have won. Because, oh, all right, they now are tapping into the outside resources. And what people don't get about China is they really don't need much from us. If you look at ancient history up until today, whenever we've come across China, and especially the Europeans, when they tried to do trade with them, they were like, oh, who are these really light people? Oh, okay. They want to sell me some shiny stuff. We already have shiny stuff, and we have these really cool spices, and we have these really cool garments as well. So we really don't need anything from the West. Okay. Fast forward a little bit. All right. Opium wars and whatnot. Open door policy. China still really doesn't need much from us. What do we give them? A place for their millionaires to come and act as proxy landlords. that's about it. Quite a bit of ideas, lots of ideas. We definitely give them that. That's for sure. But in terms of resources, they got it all. They are an exporting country. Like every country relies on China, and China actually is starting to is heavily relying on Africa because not all of the rare earth minerals are in Africa. Like not all of them are in Africa, and not all of them are in China. And so they're definitely spread out, Australia as well, but quite a few important components for transistors and whatnot are in Africa. So the Chinese have actually been moving heavily into Africa for the past decade. Well, yeah. I remember many, many years ago reading, oh yeah, Chinese moving into China. My apologies. Chinese moving into Africa and doing operations there. And I'm like, why are they moving out there? All right, whatever. Didn't really pay much attention. But now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm starting to see the effects of that, not just the intention. So they don't really have to rely on too much. And they're actually willing to be autonomous and go elsewhere and mine minerals and population control from afar. So, okay. And not even like speaking conspiracy, like, oh no, they're gonna build a death ray or anything like that. But they just really don't need us all like that. What, for our dad to have somebody to sell to? They have the rest of the world. Even if we stopped buying from China, Australia, the EU, India, even though they don't like each other, they'll still work with them. The Middle East, especially the Middle East. So there's other customers out there. So if they suddenly just like started exploiting outer resources beyond Earth, and as for other nations such as Russia is not as never thought I would be saying this in my life, but Russia is not as scientifically inclined as they once used to be. And that's not to say that, Russia is now anti-science all of a sudden overnight. No, but they're more focused on military activities because given the current setup of how they are, they've gone from, I can't really say much on the Russian political system because that is a beast on its own. What I can say is not too many people can replace Putin. Not because, Putin's a great guy or anything like that, but because how he has the system set up. Pretty much if you look at Georgia, Ukraine, and any conflict, or even with Turkey and Syria, any sort of military activities they have, Russia really gets inspired. Like if they have even a minutia of victory, whether it's booting us out of the Syrian airspace or the Ukrainian thing, it's, oh, hey, all right, we're doing pretty darn good. And you kind of got to keep doing that because if you just stop, it's like, oh, we retreated out of Syria. Oh, we left the Ukraine. Oh no. And that really gets your population demoralized. Because, well, looking at the sanctions against them, the whole energy sector, and their overall general political system isn't, I can't say any system isn't corrupt, but they certainly, quite interesting. But they are set up to where now, like, they have to keep playing this invasion game. And that's just one possibility. There are many untold possibilities as well. But either way, we'll see where they go. But they do have the advantage of the EU relying on them. So the thing about the ESA is they can't really launch much on their own. Like if you look around, not too many places in the EU can be launched from. So they have to go to Kazakhstan to launch out their astronauts. They have to rely on Russia and Roscom for this, or Roscosmos. And the thing is, like, they sent out recently a mission to Mars. But even though it was done by the ESA, since they're launching from Russia was like, hey, ESA, you gotta send us with you. So ESA, since they have no launch capabilities of their own, said, okay, no questions asked. Like, okay, so now Russia and the European Union are sending something to Mars. So even though Russia isn't exactly as scientifically inclined as they once were, now that they have this uh, partnership of sorts, they definitely do get the advantage of piggybacking off of the ESA. So here in America, we have SpaceX, we have ULA, we have Orbital ATK, and that's awesome because we have a lot of alternative launch options. And so this gets really interesting because we, unlike the EU, we have launch options that are within our own country. So that is a huge advantage. In addition, versus, let's say, China, we also aren't, these organizations are not government controlled, which is a huge bonus as well. Typically, when the government does something, it doesn't work out too well. And not to say that, oh, government is the evilest thing ever, and whatnot, but they definitely aren't the best at doing everything. Some things they're good at, some things. I'm not going to get into that list. But anywho, you have SpaceX, who recently suffered a loss, so they definitely are pushed back on their schedule. They're trying to get launches out by late October, I heard. On some sites, they still have them slated to launch in early October. However, people are saying it's more than likely to be a safe bet to say November is going to be where their launch date is. However, either way, I do look forward to seeing when that will be done. Not necessarily the launch, but just in overall how do you say, how this will play out. For one, even if, let's say SpaceX, and I hope this doesn't happen, let's say SpaceX dropped out. There is Blue Origin, who, interestingly enough, seems to be wanting to step into SpaceX's territory, because recently they had a little drawing saying, oh, where our rocket is proposed to be bigger than the Falcon Heavy, which is great and all, once it's built. I'm not dissing Blue Origin, let me just disclaim that now. I know nobody from there will listen to this, so I'm pretty safe if I wanted to diss them, but they are sponsoring the Dent Space Exploration Expo. So I don't want to go too overboard in being overcritical of them, not because, they only have one speaker there, so it's not like, Dent Space Exploration is controlled by Jeff Bezos, no. But I do want to say, it's interesting to see where they'll go, but if a company did drop out, it wouldn't be the best, but it would be a little encouraging. It would be a little encouraging because, for one, it's not that the space market is saturated, but there definitely is a lot of potential for not new rockets, but new launch pads. That is the biggest issue. Because, okay, we have Vandenberg, we have Arizona, we have Cape Canaveral. Okay. But we have a bunch of space companies and we have a bunch of commercial and private clients. And if we don't have enough launch pads, as you saw with the SpaceX thing, something like that can limit our launches. So we have a bunch of players and only a few places for them to go from. And when one of those falls, that can create ripples, I fear. And so if you're a billionaire and you happen to be super bored and listening to this podcast and you wondered, what should I invest in next in the space sector? Or maybe I should open up a rocket company like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. No. Open a launching pad service. That probably would be your best bet. Try and get something near the equator. The Russians have a launch pad they occasionally use. So yeah, definitely seeing how the launch sector evolves will be interesting. As of now, most clients are, I want to put up a satellite. And you have Moon Express and Space Israel who are going to the moon next year. But from there, after next year, including post-election, regardless of who wins, it definitely will, I fear, take a toll on NASA, regardless of who wins. So that in itself will require, for us to be a spacefaring species, we definitely will have to rely a bit more on private captains of industry for the time being until, let's say, Planet 9 somehow actually exists, which I personally highly doubt. But let's say Planet 9 exists and it has a bunch of minerals, and so that in itself would require governments to get back into the space race. So while American governments step back and the European space, so the Americans kind of will step back. ESA is kind of bound by Russia, and we'll see where that goes. China is definitely taking a big interest. I hate to say it, but China may be the next space leader. Or American private industry. That is what it is going to come down to. American private industry versus the Russians. I'm sorry. That's what you get for being American. You're just so used to always competing with Russia that when other countries come in, you still call them Russia. But we definitely, in a way, are up against China. Not necessarily like, grr, China be evil, grr, we must crush them. But we just are competing against them on the cosmic stage. So seeing where that goes is going to be interesting. But either way, I bid you adieu. So for one, thank you very much for tuning in. Now that you're refueled and resupplied, definitely head on out into the cosmos. Definitely keep an open mind, keep learning. A lot of the things I said here may not be accurate 5 seconds after I said them. And, you know what, I'm willing to say that I am not infallible, and I may very well have made a mistake in this podcast. Definitely get out there and do your own research as well, because you researching on your own is much greater than some guy behind a microphone talking to you. So either way, thank you for your time, friend. Thank you for joining me this phase, and you take care and be well.